Ngày ô na hòa rồi, ngày Charlotte ấy tụi đấy mít có khu bằng, thì mỗi ngày sáng này, sáng nay mà luôn na sẽ hòa gì cái na, sáng nay ngày thanh này cái ngà.
Seng Mai was still a teenager when she was trafficked from Myanmar's Kachin state to China and sold to a Chinese family as a bride. She was held against her will and subjected to sexual slavery, but managed to escape after several months. The Kachin people are an ethnic minority who are predominantly Christian. Armed conflict between the Myanmar military and the Kachin Independence Army has made life in this area very difficult. While the conflict dates back to the earliest days of Myanmar's independence, 2011 marked a devastating escalation as the Myanmar military launched a new offensive, ending a ceasefire and causing a mass displacement that left over 100,000 people internally displaced. In the camps where many of these displaced people live, there is very little opportunity to earn a living. The Myanmar government has made the situation worse by blocking aid to displaced people.
If we can just go outside of Kachin state, we will have a better life. A lot of young girls have a mindset like that. Then it's very easy for the traffickers or the brokers to target them.
We interviewed 37 women and girls who were trafficked from Myanmar's Kachin or northern Shan states. Traffickers preyed on their financial desperation with false promises of jobs in China and then sold them to Chinese families struggling to find brides for their sons.
Mà tụi con thì đem cha tụi cha mua về đặt yang lộm lông gọn đem mà câu được bình con nào tí nàng khâu chấp ai ní cha ý để của tụi cha mà biến lọ anh để gọi tụi làm san về yang này.
Tôi xin anh để ý MUJERES phản ra nên để phản sang ra mà tiếng Anh xuân đã đại nổi đang sẽ cả mà để.
Many of these women and girls were drugged by the traffickers during their journey to China. Others were told, once they had crossed the border, that the promised job was no longer available and they must travel further. Unable to communicate due to language barriers and with no money to go home, they were trapped.
Compradas ngayang go da sanay go gloyang go sanay de gloyang go grauna aten no na di mong compro lo luang ngayo de kan na ni gdai pe mong je mua ka ba mua ka mong je ren thế không ai ngồi ngay mong đốt cái đấy phèn chuyện nên không phải trả tiền ngon nên nhân sa đấy sa na liền
tại mi hòa là na xí hoàng na vậy, ya xí sao à sao khôn khôn này mới sẽ được, sao khôn khôn này, tại mi hòa là na của hòa vậy ngay bây giờ rồi na đấy, mà vui nam tu sĩ can đi nên thì bây giờ sẽ, nếu mà vui nam tu sĩ can đi là cho nam tu sĩ can na ngao xuống này.
One of the things that has really driven this is the one-child policy. Today, there are 30 to 40 million more men in China than there are women. And that's made it very difficult for Chinese men who are of an age where they want to get married to find a Chinese bride. And that has fed a demand for trafficked brides from Kachin state, from other parts of Myanmar, and from other countries that neighbor China.
Most were locked in a room and raped repeatedly as the families that bought them wanted them to become pregnant. 10 out of the 37 women and girls we interviewed had children fathered by their captors.
Once they had given birth to these babies, the families sometimes were happy for them to leave, and some of them were able to escape at that point. But when they escaped, they almost always were able to do so only by leaving their children behind. And they had almost no hope of seeing those children again.
tiếng ye cái lỗ khang ngài đã anh chị mình muốn có nam sản gì tiếng ye cái lỗ khang ngài ngay trong cá đêm mà tiếng ye rem sung đi về khi cả sáng à xuân này ở trong xí về mang ngày bay cùng xí ở trong ngày về mang cùng la riết xuân này xuân này xí vào bay cùng la cái ngày đại sinh nhật ngày anh chị nào phiền yên ta để bay du đẹp quá riết ngồi để.
Women and girls that returned to Myanmar after being trafficked in China struggled to rebuild their lives, and there are almost no services to help them with that task.
Thùng bù thình biến chính năng nam cầu group in để phiền yên khả năng mà xuân này mà cái group xa anh chị vào tụi cha cũng sai sang ở trên anh chị về có sang nhưng mà để cô xuân chụp cái mà cũng mà
phùng đi ngay tới vì cầu miệng tên này bình thường cái giả đi nào là phang quý rồi mà ngài gì tên này rằng sao phòng quý tôm đấy là tên này là tin nào.
For many Kachin people, the stigma against sex outside of marriage is very strong. Some people see these women and girls as deserving blame, although they have been trafficked and are victims of sexual violence. Law enforcement agencies on both sides of the border need to do better. Police from Myanmar, China, and the Kachin Independence Organization make little effort to recover trafficked women and girls. Families seeking help are often turned away repeatedly.
Như thế mà cái lăng xa thế, ora cái gì dùng cái gì dùng có mà lý lăng xa xa, thế có sao thì gloria na có ngã na phan, cái tang đuôi, thế có đi đại.
An important way to end bride trafficking is to provide opportunities to earn an adequate living in Myanmar. As long as women and girls remain displaced by the conflict and unable to feed and educate themselves in Kachin and Northern Shan states, they will be vulnerable to traffickers falsely offering them better paid work in China. The United Nations and donor governments should support the work of non-governmental groups in the region who are working to end trafficking and assisting trafficking survivors.